What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Forge. My name is Will. We've already talked about on this channel how to find your purpose, how to set goals that inspire you, but this is a huge spoiler alert, so if you're afraid of spoilers, please exit the video now. If you don't do things, you don't actually accomplish things. Setting goals, finding your purpose, all these things, these are to point you in the direction of what you want and to inspire you and motivate you, but motivation and inspiration doesn't actually get you any thinner, any richer, any stronger, any happier. Or maybe happier for like 2 seconds, but then it burns out, and then you're like, oh crap, I didn't actually do anything today. Let me try to motivate myself again, and you get caught in this feedback loop. And every single person who has spoken on success, every book that I've ever read, they're always talking about habits, 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 and it's almost like we get it already. Like, we have to set habits. Like, is there a better way to handle it? And partially, no. And you don't want to reinvent the wheel on habits. Habits work for a reason. You're taking your mind and you're automating doing the things that you need to do to get you closer to your goal. Every goal that you set, you should focus on achieving that with your habits. And the book that I read a couple years ago that totally changed my perspective on this is called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. That book talked about what is the power of having habits that you're consistently sticking to in your life. And so I don't know if anyone here is familiar with investments or with how compound interest works, but just to give you an idea, if the average index fund, if you put $100 a month into it for the next 5 years, right, every dollar that you put in there is going to grow at an average of 8% a year. So assuming 8% a year for 5 years, you're putting in $100 a month, you'll have $7,000 in that account, right? Now, let's do that over 40 years, right? Now that's 8 times as long. But you don't have 8 times as much money. No, instead of having about $7,000 in your account, you have about $310,000 because it's an exponential function and it curves more and more steeply upwards and it keeps growing at a higher and higher rate. The concept behind a compound effect is that that actually works for every area of your life. That's true of your fitness, of your mindset, not just the money that you're specifically investing into the stock market. So we need to think about habits in that way. Now, Compound Effect was the book I would recommend on habits until a more recent book came out called Atomic Habits by James Clear. This book is actually the first breakthrough on how I've ever thought about what's the best way to formulate habits, and I've implemented all these different things in my life and have found much greater success, felt much better about myself, and am getting closer and closer to my goal with each day's worth of work than I ever have been. And the way that he positioned goals and habits is that everyone always teaches you it's always about habits, right? So you got to figure out the outcomes you want. I want to lose 25 pounds. Okay. Then you keep just trying to lose weight, trying to lose weight, trying to lose weight. If you manage to stay consistent enough, right, toward going for your outcomes, you'll change the processes. So now, like, okay, well, I'm used to waking up early in the morning and working out, so to make my life easier, I might as well just keep my running shoes close to my bed or keep my workout clothes nearby and have them laid out so it's easier, right? And now the processes that you're putting in place make it easier to hold on to your habits, and now eventually you'll view yourself as someone who does this. Your identity will shift, and now it's essentially automated and a part of you as I'm someone who wakes up in the morning and works out. I'm someone who lives frugally and saves money. And now it's unbreakable. The issue is that you need to hold on to the habit without the processes to get the processes and hold on to that long enough to get the identity. It's kind of like applying for a job where, hey, this is an entry-level position and we want people fresh out of college, but you need 5 years experience. Okay, well, I can't get a job because I don't have any experience, so I can't get any experience, so I can't get a job, and you're stuck in this loop. Well, a lot of people get stuck in a loop. Well, I can't view myself as someone who does this because I don't do this, but because I don't view myself as someone who does this, I don't do it, and you're constantly stuck. So you've always been taught outcomes, processes, identity. What James Clear, the author, positioned is you should focus on changing your identity and who you view yourself as, then building processes to reinforce that, and then naturally the outcomes will come from that. And the only provable way to actually change how you view yourself is taking small wins in that direction. So it's a matter of setting yourself up and hacking your life so that you will take tiny little baby steps toward being the person you want to be. And then naturally, you'll be setting up more and more processes to make this easier. Baby steps become regular walking, become sprinting, become Usain Bolt winning the 400 meter at the Olympics. Then you're in the position you want to be in. So he broke down how we all handle habits into a couple different sections. There's cue, craving, response, and reward. These are 4 different sections of habit that I'm going to get into each one and what you can do to hack your habits at each stage. So there are 4 main laws into handling your habits. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and then make it satisfying. Right? Now, that is to form good habits. Whatever the inverse of that is true for breaking bad habits. So instead of making something obvious, make it invisible. But let's go through this step by step. So the first law is making it obvious. Right? There's a system that the MTA workers in the New York City subways use. It's called point and call. So if you've ever heard that weird, awkward mumbling over the intercom that you can't understand unless you've lived in New York for 30 years, that is conductors saying, hey, we're leaving this stop at this time, all clear, and they're just pointing out the most obvious things, like the train is leaving. And naturally, anyone would think, well, duh. But that handles so many, it brings to your attention anything that could be amiss. So you can't actually go on autopilot. You have to say it out loud, and you'll notice things that you don't. And New York City actually dropped subway accidents by up to 30% with this system. So you need to do that with your habits. Hey, point out each habit that you have. Write them down. Just observe. Hey, every time this happens, I do this. Every morning I do this. Every night I do this. And figure out, we've already been over, the kind of goals you want, the kind of person you want to be. Label each goal. Or each habit, is this something that gets me closer to my goal? Or is this something that gets me closer to my purpose? Or does it get me further away? Or does it literally not matter? And so you can categorize them as good or bad habits, completely dependent on if that's your goal. Like, most people would consider smoking a bad habit, but if you don't actually care about your health and you only care about the immediate positive feeling of de-stressing by smoking a cigarette, then a cigarette isn't actually a bad habit for you. You have to figure out what are the good and bad habits for you. Once you figure that out, it's time to figure out what new goals you can put in to get you closer. What habits do you need to develop? So after doing point and call, you need to add something called intentionality to each of your goals. There's a study done where they had a group of people that didn't have a written goal, and a group of people that had a written goal, and then the people that had a written goal with a stated place and time that they would do the thing that they had set a goal for. It is just as likely for you not to do a thing if you have a goal written or if you don't. But if you add a specific place and time, you add some level of plan, it is almost 3 times more likely that you are going to do something. So figure out the time and place. From that, you can do something that's called habit stacking. This is the process of, when I do this, I do this. For example, I am doing a challenge right now for this channel of living like Jocko Willink and waking up at 4:30 every morning. To wake up at 4:30 every morning, I have a list of habits. At 4:30 a.m., I get up to get my alarm. After I get my alarm, I go into the bathroom and splash cold water on my face. After I splash cold water on my face, I brush my teeth. After I brush my teeth, I put on my gym shoes and go into the garage to work out. It's after X habit, I do Y habit. After Y habit, I do Z habit. That is how you can build really effective routines in your life, because then sticking to one habit will naturally cause all the other downstream habits to happen from that. Another huge thing is about rigging your environment for success, right? I go to bed in my gym clothes. It pisses my wife off, but it's really easy to get out of bed especially in wintertime, because you're warm, you're in your nice little bed, like, oh, this is freaking best. I got like covers on, and there's heat, and this is warm, and if you sleep like with someone, it's like, hey, there's 2 body heats here, this is freaking best, and you have to go out into a cold and dark room. That's the worst thing ever. If you're already enclosed, you're a little bit warmer, it's easier to get out of bed. That's just one example of rigging your environment. And the last huge thing is something called spatial integrity. Whatever you're going to do, make sure it's confined to a specific space. And I have done this in a tiny little studio apartment with a pregnant wife. So this is 100% doable no matter what your living situation is. Wherever you sleep, sleep there. Do not work in bed. Wherever you work, don't play video games. You need to keep whatever you're doing separate. I'm not saying not to play video games, just make sure that you're sitting in a different seat, ideally a different part of your apartment or your house, and you keep different spaces for different things. It works much better for your mind, it's much easier to focus and much easier to stay on track because the mind associates habits with locations. So these are all different ways to make something obvious and to avoid handling any kind of bad habits. Obviously, you can rig your environment to break bad habits. If you're trying not to drink, you probably shouldn't have alcohol in your house. If you're trying to lose weight, don't have junk food in your home. You can break bad habits. If you're trying to not smoke cigarettes, don't have cigarettes. There are a lot of things you can do to just set yourself up to succeed easier. That brings us to the second law of habits, make it attractive. Or for the inverse of breaking bad habits, make it unattractive. Make it dirt ugly, like absolutely not. The way that we do that is, first, it's called temptation bundling. There are things that you want to do, and there are things that you need to do to achieve your goals. We talked about habit stacking. You can bundle things you enjoy into them. Say that you need to exercise more, right? But you really, really, really want to check your phone. When I want to check my phone, I will do 5 burpees. After I do 5 burpees, I will check my phone. Say that you work in sales, I will make, when I want to check the scores on ESPN, I will make 3 sales calls. When I make 3 sales calls, I will check the scores on ESPN. And you create that positive association, and you're using habit stacking to take those temptations and actually rig your own mind. So that same feeling that you had to check the scores is now making you sales calls. That same temptation to go on Facebook, you're now doing burpees. You don't actually have the same level of addiction to burpees as you do Facebook unless you are completely psycho, in which case we'd love to have you on here and just figure out what the hell happened to you to make you that way and how can we be that way. The second way is to have a group of people that will positively reinforce doing the right thing and negatively reinforce doing the wrong thing. This is why a lot of people who are in relationships that are with single people are significantly more likely to cheat, that people who are trying to get in shape, that have overweight friends, are more likely to fail at that goal. Whoever you surround yourself with, you're more likely to follow their behaviors. Culture and imitation are huge factors, and you need to figure out what is your cultural background as well, and how is that factoring into you. Different religious backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, they all come with sets of expectations that have been ingrained into you in childhood. How are those working for you? How are those working against you? And how are the people in your life reinforcing the different behaviors that you have? And the last way is, how can you actually reframe bad habits into something positive? Because removing a bad habit is always viewed as, oh, crap, I don't get to do this, or crap, I have to go do this. Waking up in the morning to lift weights. A lot of people don't enjoy that. They're like, oh, I have to wake up to go lift weights. Reframing that to, I get to wake up in the morning to build strength, and looking at the benefits of it and saying that out loud enough times whenever you think the inverse, that will reprogram your mind to only be viewing the benefits of that situation. I can't spend money on stupid things. Like, oh, I get to save up my money so I can invest and be rich and quit my job. There are different perspectives you can have on all of that. So that's the second law. The third law is making it easy or difficult. Remember, inverse to break the bad habit. The thing that a lot of people don't get, there's this thing out there, oh, it takes 90 days to build a habit. No, it actually takes 21 days. No, it takes 180. And it's just random numbers that people say, and people change the numbers because you'll watch their YouTube video or read their book because they put some number to it. The actual number is, I have no idea, and neither do you, and neither does anyone. But the one thing that is known is that the number of repetitions of a habit is the main determining factor, not the length of time you've held a habit. So obviously a daily habit only has something that happens once per day, but something like doing 5 burpees every time you want to check your phone, that habit is not, you're not stuck to one iteration of that habit per day. You're going to be doing that multiple times. The more times you do that, the faster the habit will ingrain. And how quickly it ingrains completely depends on you as an individual. That's a personal journey for you to figure out, and you'll start to figure out, based on yourself and your own experience of doing this, how long does it actually take me to formulate something? So remember, repetition is the key. So in order to get more repetition, we want to reduce any kind of friction that's involved in performing anything. This is a little bit like rigging your environment, but it can even go onto an even deeper level than this. I know that when my wife and I were trying to eat healthier, we've fallen off this, so I'm going to make a commitment here. Babe, we have to get back on this because this was such a good idea when we did it. We would meal prep on Sundays, so we would cook out our meals for the whole week. And now it's so easy to just take the meal and eat it, or heat it up real quick and then eat it, as opposed to having to cook healthy each individual night. Because it's so easy to just be like, oh crap, we don't have anything. Let me Uber Eats, and now I just spent $40 on a meal that probably should have cost $5 if I just cooked it on Sunday. So figure out how to actually reduce friction in anything, or obviously to increase the friction in doing anything negative. So the second is mastering the decisive moment. And this is something called the 2-minute rule, that the most important part of a habit is actually initiating the action. Think about when you don't want to go to the gym. Very few people get to the gym and start working out and they're like, no, I'm going to go back to bed. It's normally you wake up and you're like, no, I'm going to go back to bed. Or you get in the car maybe to go to the gym and you're like, no, I'm not actually going to drive. Once you're in motion, it's really easy to continue. So it's really easy to convince yourself to do something for 2 minutes. Waking up in the morning to work out for 90 minutes, that's a harder sell. If you say, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to work out in the morning, I'm going to do push-ups and sit-ups for 2 minutes. That's a really, really easy habit to stick to. It's really easy to convince yourself. You're not sitting, oh, crap, I got to lift weights for 90 minutes. I don't feel like doing that. Oh, I just have to do push-ups for a minute and then sit-ups for a minute. That's easy. And now you're beginning to initiate, and that is the base from which you can grow on. Those are those small wins that are going to change your identity as someone who wakes up in the morning and works out. Another huge thing is automating whatever habits that you can. So a huge thing, if you have any kind of direct deposit at your job, you can ask them to auto deposit into a savings account. You can have them automatically deduct money into a health savings account, into a 401k. This is a really easy way to make sure that you're doing the things you're supposed to with your money. But another huge way is having smaller plates when you're eating to reduce the amount of calories that you're eating, or setting up filters on your email. Figure out whatever you can automate, because a lot of people talk about you just need more and more and more and more and more willpower, which is an important thing. It's a skill and a muscle you can build up. The reason why Jocko Willink looks as buff as he does is it's just A, muscle, B, just willpower, just built into his traps. That's why the man is such a beast. But you shouldn't expend the willpower you have unnecessarily. Don't waste it, automate what you can, so as you build your willpower strength, it's more efficiently used. And lastly, there's something called a commitment device. That is something that will make whatever you don't want to do essentially impossible. There's a very common practice for athletes who are doing any kind of sport where they need to weigh in. So wrestling, because you need to make sure that you're fighting only within your weight class, so you lose a crap ton of weight right before the fight. A lot of those athletes leave their wallet home when they go to the weigh-in, because that's when they're at their hungriest and they're going away. Now there's a 0% chance that they're going to get fast food because they literally can't pay for it because they have nothing to pay for it with. I've heard of people who have an outlet timer that automatically shuts off all their lights at the time that they want to go to bed. This is about using your own creativity to figure out, how can I make it impossibly difficult to do the things I don't want to do. And lastly, we need to make things satisfying or unsatisfying to avoid negatives. Here is the classic paradox. The things that you shouldn't do feel good initially and then hurt you later. The things that you need to do to get where you want to do typically suck and only give you a benefit later on. And a lot of the things on the bad habit side, there's no feeling at all because it's inaction. And so there's no reward built into the human mind unless there's an associated action. So reward for inaction, the monkey brain gets messed up. Because we need to remember that here's your neocortex up here. This is where you do human stuff. And then there is a much more emotional and subconscious layer, and that is the part that's right next to the behavioral cortex, which is the lowest level brain. So your more animal instincts are much more in control of your behavior than your higher rational thought. That's why you constantly have these higher level goals, but your behavior doesn't match it. So we need to, instead of trying to overcome the fact that we have this monkey brain inside of us, we might as well just use it to our advantage. It's much easier to go with the flow than try to swim against the tide. So the first thing is figure out how to create an immediate reward for things, especially if there is some kind of inaction involved. The best example that James Clear brought out is keep the money that you spend on stuff you don't want to spend on it in like a checkings account, right? You spend, I know Graham Stephan is always just crapping on Starbucks $5 iced cup lattes, and that's just because why the hell would you spend $5 on a freaking coffee? It's not a good habit, and if you look at how that compounds, that's insanely expensive. So keep the money that you spend on coffee in your checkings account. And now, when you drive by that Starbucks and you don't stop, next time you stop, please don't do this when you're driving, because then you'll sue us, and then we'll have to shut down the channel and blah, blah, blah. When you're not driving, take the $5 you just didn't spend at Starbucks and transfer that into your savings account. And if you go to Starbucks, but then you do something that Graham Stephan said that I love, that just get the regular coffee and then ask for a cup of ice and save $2 or $3 and mix it yourself, transfer the $2 or $3 you just saved immediately into your savings account. So now there's this immediate association. I did this, I saved money. So that's a huge step. Another thing is tracking your habits. Whatever isn't inspected doesn't get changed. So make sure that whatever you're doing throughout the day, if you're trying to lose weight, make sure you're tracking your calories and how much you're working out. If you're trying to save money, make sure you're tracking your expenses and your income. And so we're going to be adding habit tracking to the app. I don't know if you guys know this, but we do have an app, and that is something that we've added on to this Forge YouTube channel because we wanted to differentiate ourselves from a lot of other YouTube channels that say, here's information, now good luck. We actually want to be partners with you in your personal journey, and the only way we could figure out how to do that in mass is here's an actual app that's going to help you do each and everything. So we're going to be adding habit tracking to that real soon, so keep your eyes out for that. Another huge thing is the principle of never missing twice. This is a concept of you're going to screw up. You are a human being. You have two natural responses. You can either be like, man, I do suck, I should give up. And then after 3 or 4 days, you stop wallowing and then you get back after it. Or you just have a principle of never miss twice. Because if you 100% hold yourself to that principle, the worst you could ever do is every other day. I'm going to work out every day, and you suck and you're lazy. But you never miss twice. You suck on Monday, but then you work out on Tuesday, and then you miss on Wednesday again, but you can't miss twice in a row, so you got to work out on Thursday, and every other day you'll handle it. So just make sure you never miss twice. A huge thing that's going to help you is have an accountability partner. Whatever thing you're trying to do, make sure you have partners with that. This is especially helpful, I've seen, with people quitting things like alcohol, drugs, pornography. That almost requires having someone in the trenches with you, so you can have someone who knows what you're going through and you don't want to let that person down. Gary Vee often said that he paid a trainer not necessarily to train him, but that he would actually go to the gym more for his trainer than for himself. And I think that's something we can all relate to. And the last is have some kind of contract. It's called a habit contract, and it's the idea of that there is something that happens if you fail to do something. And there's a YouTuber, Thomas Frank, has an amazing YouTube channel. I recommend you check it out. He's constantly putting out great stuff. He, at least for a while, had a timer that would go off. I think it was like 15 minutes after he was supposed to wake up. So he would have to wake up and then deactivate this, or a Twitter, he would like auto tweet, "I'm a scrub. First 5 people to click this link, I have to Venmo $5 to." So it automatically publicly called him a scrub and then took $25 from him. That is freaking brilliant. I know that he said that he had stopped it because it was giving him constant anxiety, but I'm probably going to implement something like that until the constant anxiety messes with me. But think of ways that if you fail to do something, there's an immediate and punishing thing. But guys, that's really everything we have on Hacking Habits. So remember, you want to make things obvious that you want to do. You want to make things attractive, make them easy, and make them rewarding. And the goal of this is so that you can hack your mind to make it as likely as possible for you to perform small habits in the direction you want to go. And that is most likely going to change your identity, which will change your processes, which changes the outcomes, which is what you wanted all along. Love you all. If you want the books, click the links in the description. We give a portion of it to charity. So do that, and love you.